Welcome to the Weekly Tradecast, the podcast brought to you by UN Trade and Development. I'm Sarah Toms. Today, we're closing the year with a special episode from 2024 into 2025, charting a new development course.
We must defend multilateralism every day, but a renewed form of multilateralism with greater representation in governance, with fairer rules in trade and the environment, with much less inequity in international finance.
Rebecca Greenspan, the Secretary General of UN Trade and Development. It's been a transformative year marked by extraordinary challenges and opportunities, from rising economic uncertainties and shifting trade landscapes to the collaborative spirit of the Global Leaders Forum and the UN Summit of the Future. The need for innovative solutions has never been greater. Stay tuned as we reflect on key moments and voices in global development in 2024 and the new paths we're forging for a more inclusive and resilient future. This year, UN Trade and Development celebrated our 60th anniversary, a milestone that inspired reflection and also renewed resolve. At the heart of this effort was the Global Leaders Forum in June, bringing together hundreds of senior officials and experts. The forum in Geneva focused on bold ideas and strategies to chart a new development course for a rapidly changing world.
We are in very difficult times. But nevertheless, it's necessary to talk to each other. Trade is necessary, talking to each other is necessary, and it's very, very important to know each other.
We need sustainability, we need more green innovation. We need to understand that if we continue in our old ways, that we're not going to have a future for the future generation.
Competition is always good, but without strong institutions and a rules-based order, the risk is that competition may drift into conflict. And we're already seeing a multiplicity of conflicts around the world.
UNTAC is one of those UN agencies that are playing a very, very, very important role, partnering with other countries, including my own, in addressing specific issues of development, of poverty.
Secretary General Rebecca Greenspan, the first woman to lead UN Trade and Development, kicked off the Global Leaders Forum with a call for action.
The global economy today is very different from what it was in 1964. It is far larger, more interconnected, more complex. But seen from the perspective of those who still struggle, the poor, the unconnected, the discriminated, the rural, but also women and youth. The ground remains too uneven and the climb too steep. We must defend multilateralism every day, but a renewed form of multilateralism with greater representation in governance, with fairer rules in trade and the environment, with much less inequity in international finance.
Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, framed the critical issues.
It is becoming clear that we also need a new architecture of international finance, taxation, and digital governance, and a new vision on how to measure progress, how to promote South-South trade, and how to ensure stability in a multipolar world.
Calls for change to multilateral structures, to the global financial system, to the rules for a digital world, also echoed through the UN Summit of the Future in September in New York.
Ultimately, this is about creating the kind of world we want to be in the future, not allowing it to happen to us, but actually building the world we want to live in, where technology is a tool that helps us be better versions or more productive versions of ourselves. And that allows us to really view the planet as a planet rather than each country, trying to hit net zero on their own.
Sana Karigani is a professor of practice in artificial intelligence at King's College London.
The second is, I firmly believe that you can never have innovation without proper guardrails and regulation. I think companies are much more likely to innovate in an environment where they are sure of where the boundaries are and where they are able to play.
This year was also a time to reflect on the 80th anniversary of the Bretton Woods Conference and the multilateral systems that flowed from it to help the global economy recover from the Second World War. Danny Quah, Dean of the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy at the National University of Singapore, looked at how institutions like the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank must adapt to fresh challenges and new geopolitical realities.
Today, there are still problems of foreign debt overhang. But today, when we look out in the international landscape, it is not a world where cities, towns, and countryside have been devastated. It is a very different kind of world. It is a world that still needs multilateralism, that still needs that level playing field. But the original referees, the original supporters of that multilateral system are beginning to question whether that system works for them now. For a long time, in decades past, there were issues about whether the decision-making power was sufficiently distributed in a way that reflected economic realities. There were countries that had grown to be much more powerful and felt that they did not have enough say in the international system. And so the rebalancing that's needed is one that's much more complicated, I think, than what it was in decades past.
The need for fresh thinking and more multilateral support was central to the UN Trade and Development Report released in October, Rethinking Development in the Age of Discontent. Global growth has settled into a trajectory not strong enough for developing countries to tackle the many challenges they face. That low growth, along with high debt levels, weak investment, and fragmented trade, threaten to deepen economic divides and fuel social discontent. But UN Trade and Development's Anastasia Nesvetalova believes the Global South has a unique chance to drive the green transition and to reshape global trade for the future.
We see huge demand for minerals. We see growing demand for critical commodities. This presents opportunities to developing countries in terms of their exports. The most urgent task internationally is to ensure that the debt architecture, the financial architecture, meets the needs of the developing world. And that, as a priority, it involves mechanisms and approaches to alleviate sovereign debt burdens and debt service burdens on many developing countries that find it increasingly unsustainable.
These governance needs meet concrete challenges on the ground and at sea. Maritime transport accounts for up to 80% of global merchandise trade. Tensions continue to impact traffic in the Red Sea, disrupting shipping routes and the movement of goods around the world. Another shortcut, the Panama Canal, suffered its own disruptions as low water levels reduced the number and size of ships that can pass through. Rebecca Greenspan was in Panama to see the situation for herself.
This shows us that trade, climate change, and development are interconnected, and that it depends on us, on what we do together to really be able to face the challenges that the world has to solve right now.
Making trade cleaner and greener is vital to achieving global climate targets, as around a quarter of all emissions come from the production and distribution of goods and services. Although making and shipping goods around the world does contribute to emissions, trade can also offer solutions to a greener future. UN Trade and Development's Chanteline Carpentier attended the COP29 Global Summit in Azerbaijan in November. I asked her how countries can use trade as a tool for positive change.
Some of these national trade measures include, for instance, the policies to advance renewable energy production or increase energy efficiency in the country. The other one are to take advantage of new value chain or expand value chains that are sustainable and take advantage of the increased demand for decarbonized products and therefore advance the sustainable development at the same time, right? Because greenhouse gases, it doesn't care where it's produced. It has the global impact on all of us.
As well as trade, large investments are needed to move to cleaner, greener energy, cut emissions, and adapt to climate change. UN Trade and Development's World Investment Report is a global reference on financial flows. This year's edition warned that uncertainties persist, especially for developing countries that need funds to grow now and adapt in the future. It will take trillions of dollars to meet climate and development goals. The world's advanced economies have pledged billions to help developing countries, but so far, few of the promises have been met and just a small amount of the funding is flowing.
So not only is the world failing to allocate enough quantity of capital to the green transition in general, but it is also not using the right quality of finance. And as long as the rich world is not willing, either through public finance or through reallocation of institutional investment, to help fund that additional upfront capital costs, the sustainable transition, the green transition simply is not going to happen.
But economist, finance expert, and sustainability advisor Sony Kapoor still believes we can get the money we need to finance the green transition and really make a difference.
The thing that makes most sense is to allocate large sums of money towards the latest, most cutting edge green technologies being developed. The biggest profitable opportunities, even in the most cynical, conflict-ridden world, lie in emerging economies where demand for these technologies and their deployment will be very high, where growth rates are much higher.
I talked to Isabella Weber, assistant professor of economics at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, to find out how we can better support trade and development while building global resilience.
I think that fragmentation for the time being is the new normal, so we better get prepared to navigate the storms ahead. The cost of being preparedness usually looks high when you have to spend the money, but it's lower than the money that you have to spend when you actually wait until the disaster is there. Therefore, I think that states have a critical role to play in organizing such policies of preparedness for essential sectors. And there, of course, multilateralism is critical, because at the end of the day, these markets are global, these supply chains are global, and you need coordination.
For Celeste Monga, who teaches public policy at Harvard University, trade, smart diversification, and wider investment in development hold the keys to a more stable and sustainable future.
All the major global problems require that no one be left behind. You look at security, terrorism, you look at unemployment, which is pushing people to extreme conflicts, a lot of that. Well, you really need to ensure that there is inclusive growth everywhere in the world, especially in developing countries. And the way to do that, I think, has to be anchored in trade. Trade is the most reliable engine for economic transformation, for inclusive economic transformation. So UNCTAD's role is critical.
As we wrap up this special edition of the Weekly Tradecast, one theme shines through. The world's challenges also offer opportunities. From unlocking the potential of the global south to using trade to drive sustainable development, the path forward demands bold and collaborative action. As we step into 2025, more inclusive growth, smarter investments, and a stronger commitment to global resilience is a future we can shape together. The Weekly Tradecast is back on the 9th of January with more insights and updates. As always, you can keep up with the world of trade and development on our website, unctad.org. I'm Sarah Thoms in Geneva, wishing you happy holidays and a new year filled with possibilities.